it's Christy Harden-Smith from FireDogLake.com.
And Marcy Wheeler from thenexthurrah.com.
We're also doing some blogging at HuffingtonPost.com, and we're here live from the Prettyman Courthouse in Washington, D.C. from the Libby trial. This evening, we'd like to just recap a little bit of the day's events for everybody. There were three big surprises today. The first is the way things worked with regard to the conversation that Scooter Libby and Dick Cheney and Kathy Martin had on the 12th on the Air Force Two coming back from the Ronald Reagan dedication of the new carrier. Apparently, Vice President Cheney wrote out some handwritten notes as to how Scooter Libby was supposed to talk to the media about the Wilson matter. And then Scooter Libby was asked to supersede Vice President Cheney's press secretary and actually talk to the press himself, which was a very unusual move. The fact that Vice President Cheney did that himself and did those orders was alluded to today in the prosecutor's opening statement as potential motive for Scooter Libby acting as a firewall.
Another one of the things that was interesting today is that Scooter Libby, in addition, we all know that Dick Cheney has a copy of Joe Wilson's op-ed that he annotated and underlined, and apparently Scooter Libby has his own copy. So they all want to be bloggers, but they don't know how, so they're still doing it on paper.
Also, one of the interesting things was that Richard Armitage, who, as those folks who have been following the Plame case know, was the original leaker to Bob Novak, apparently visited Mark Grossman, who was the number 3 person at the State Department, the night before Grossman had his interview with the FBI to talk to him about the fact that he had been Novak's leaker. It was a little bit of an odd thing, and I think Marcy and I were both very interested in that. So we'll have to see how the testimony comes out with that, both from Grossman continuing tomorrow and also from Richard Armitage, who the defense is saying they're definitely going to be calling.
The big news, though, is that it looks like Libby's team is throwing Rove under the bus. They're saying that Rove was the guilty guy and Scooter Libby's the fall guy for Karl Rove.
And one other thing, Geraldine Merritt, you can be very happy over at Talk Left because someone did get an immunity deal, and it looks like it was Ari Flesher. You know, the tone in the room, I think, was pretty somber, although I have to say that Pat Fitzgerald gave a very succinct summation for a case as complicated as it is. And I think Ted Wells
gave all of his evidence in his opening statement, and if I were a juror, I mean, I know this case inside and out, but if I were a juror, I would be so confused I'd go home and kind of rip my eyes out.
There was a ruling about expert testimony earlier. There wasn't anything today. And Libby had tried to get in a memory expert earlier in the summer when we had a lot of the motions hearings. That expert testimony on memory was excluded, but defense counsel managed to get in some testimony regarding the memory issue anyway, both in opening statements and in vouching a little bit with Mr. Grossman in the initial part of cross-examination today. Well, tomorrow's going to be a continuation of Mark Grossman, and I think also Kathy Martin is going to be testifying, and that ought to be a really interesting one because she apparently contradicts quite a bit of what Scooter Libby said in his grand jury testimony.
Yeah, and Kathy Martin was really, one thing we learned yesterday was that Scooter Libby basically set up Kathy Martin as the leaker and allowed her to kind of take the fall, and he just kind of looked down at his shoes and didn't do anything about it. So Kathy Martin really is this kind of female subordinate who's been really screwed over by her boss, and she's going to be a really important witness against Libby and Cheney.
Should be an interesting day.
It's been very busy. We keep getting DOS attacks, so there were parts during the day where I could not save, and I was just trying to keep things going and go back and save it whenever I could. But it's fun because I know the case well enough to be able to put in some comments about, you know, Ted Wells is full of it, but otherwise it's a lot of work.
And if my hand recovers, I'll be going home to, from taking notes today, I'll be going home to do a recap for everybody on the blog as well. So we should have another fairly thorough recap on all of the legal analysis as soon as we can get back to the computer and start typing. Thanks for reading.
And we'll see you tomorrow.